I support this bill and providing some disaster assistance and funding to Hawaii County. So I'll say that off the bat, but I want to make sure that we're thinking wisely about how it's spent. And I know, Diane, you mentioned rebuilding critical infrastructure, and Patrick ended his testimony saying we have to rebuild Puna. Have you guys taken the time to think about what's a reasonable future for Puna? I mean, yes, we have to make sure like people who live in Kalapana and Pahoa have safe roads to drive on and maybe provide access to Pohikis, but we're not rebuilding Leilani Estates and Kapoho, and it's just not entirely clear. And I know it's difficult if it's your district and people who like live there and love that area and I'm sure you have pressure from your community to basically rebuild and try to go back to what was there previously, but that's not, I don't think, to have a goal of doing that entirely is not going to be a good use of taxpayer dollars. So to what degree has that conversation happened at your level?
Maybe I can start. This is Diane from the county administration. So the administration's been, with the recovery team, we've been really proactive from the start. The mayor told us, learn from our past mistakes. And those past mistakes are, maybe encouraging development where there's risk. And it was development that provided very affordable housing opportunities and production areas, and that is a challenge to balance because, as indicated earlier, this community is made up of predominantly low-income folks. So learning from the past, how can we be cognizant of the public resources that we are expending at the county level and asking from the state and federal resources. So there's a competing balance between public resources, what business needs have, and residents. Some residents want to go home. Some people want to never go home again. We need to balance the safety and risks and property rights. So we've been taking steps to move forward. We've partnered with UH Manoa to conduct a risk assessment. That should be out this month. We will couple that with U.S. Geological Survey's hazard zones, and then do some scenario options, looking at, do we do business as usual? Do we replace everything? Or do we do straight up mitigation and move everybody out and retreat from the area with buyouts?
Sorry to interrupt, but I mean, business as usual. It doesn't sound like a robust conversation has happened if do we replace everything is a question that's still on the table, because I mean, the ground is literally still steaming.
We understand that, and so we are moving forward to put the information, solid scientific information, analytical information before the council for future decision making.
Thank you, Diana. And just to direct that answer to Ms. Lowen, what Diane is talking about is migratory housing. What we want to do is put this money in areas in which the jobs are and the capacity is. So what we've been having conversations about is migratory housing. They live in Puna because that's where they can afford it. So where do we put this migratory housing where they're closer to jobs? Is it in Councilmember Richards' district? Perhaps. That will be driven by a general plan. Our general plan update is coming up. We have all of our community development plans. Those are all coming through all of our committees. Our mass transit master plan, we're dovetailing all of that into it. And we're beginning to stand up a land trust. So to answer your question, what are we doing? We're convening all of these.
Well, more specifically, I mean, I support the idea of building more housing, but I think more specifically it's about infrastructure in Puna and what's the plan for Puna and what's the long-term vision for, how much you try to do, what we would call, like, if we talked about sea level rise, would be some kind of like managed retreat out of these like high-risk areas where you're, right on top of the rift zone.
So unfortunately, this takes time, and sometimes it takes money, and the county hasn't had had financial resources. So we're pulling those together, and we are moving forward with getting the information for decision makers. We are using the existing general plan, we're using the existing community development plan, and we are doing extensive outreach to the community, because one of the important things to ask is, what do you want for your community, rather than having the federal government, state government, or county government come and say, this is what's going to happen in your community. But we also know that there can be tools like incentives to encourage people to make choices. So we want to make good choices, and the anticipation is that we'll be able to do this sometime this year. Okay, so by teeing up, if the legislature can help us with these resources and tee that up, we will be ready by 2020 to make some solid decisions, to making solid headway towards infrastructure decisions in 2020. That said, we're not stopping, because this recovery process is complex. It demands immediate attention. There's community members today that are demanding to go home. Some people, again, don't want to go home, but some people do. So what's the balance there? So we're working with some of those folks on temporary access. So we're not investing large dollars before the council is able to make good decisions. So we understand we're asking a lot of you, a lot of trust, and we're willing to be held accountable for what the administration puts forward, and I can't speak for the council, but I think we all have a public fiduciary responsibility.
Okay, it sounds like that conversation a little bit still needs to happen, but thank you. I'll see if someone else asks
Representative Mariyoshi.
Yeah, just a quick question. Of the money that you're asking for in this bill, how much of it is going to be spent in a zone that's a high-risk lava zone, like a lava zone 1 or 2?
Okay, so again, no firm decisions have been made. We've identified $236 million in impacts to public facilities on the county side, county roads, water lines, and parks. No decisions have been made at this point as to putting those resources back into that hazard zone 1 area. Again, we're trying to do a risk assessment, so we'll have that information. We'll couple that with the hazard zones, and we'll do some scenario planning. We may want to put smaller roads in, so that only we're encouraging agriculture and those existing homes. The council, has opportunities to use the existing tools within the zoning code to possibly.
Sorry, I don't want to cut you off. I know we're running short of time. But potentially all of it, is that a possibility?
To put back there into
the lava zone 1. Okay. I mean, potentially all of this money could be spent on infrastructure.
I don't think so.
Because I'm going to estimate if you have one.
No, we don't at this point.